Greetings, everyone. Dr. Brian Scott with you. We're wrapping up another week of the Insights to the End Times. This is Friday, August the 16th. That means we're in the second half of the month already, and time is flying by, as everyone seems to understand and know. We have been studying where we are in God's timetable. We're in the book of 2 Timothy chapter 3, dealing with perilous times in these last days. And the subsequent verses talk about the factors that describe perilous times. Verse number 2 contains 8 factors. We're still on the last factor. That's number 8, unholiness. It has crept into our society everywhere, and particularly into our own personal lives. And for the most part, we don't recognize it. We don't see it because we just go through week after week after week and year after year after year without realizing things have changed dramatically. Now, we always seem to recognize the fact that the price of something has gone up, that maybe it's groceries, or maybe it's gasoline for our cars, or maybe it's the hydro for our homes, and those of you who have EVs, et cetera, et cetera. But do we really realize what's behind it? This is a spirit of unholiness and a spirit of unthankfulness that has crept into the land, and it has degraded things and downgraded things all over the place. I'm being careful not to get into some areas that are pet peeves, but boy, it is absolutely everywhere. Now, the other day as we finished up on Wednesday, I was sharing with you how the dollar's value has decreased substantially over the last 50 years since the United States went off the gold standard. And they say that the dollar today versus 1973 only purchases 5 cents of products or goods. I know personally, in terms of gassing up my car, as I mentioned last Wednesday, this past podcast, that it cost me $1.85 per liter. Being in Canada, we are in liters. The Canadian gallon is larger than the U.S. gallon, so we have 4.54 liters per gallon Canadian. That means my cost per gallon for the gas was $8.41. Compare that to when I first started driving in 1973, my first car, still in university, my first job, I was driving out of town every week. I was paying 44 cents a gallon, not liter, a gallon. So my dollar today versus 1973 gasoline analysis, it's worth 4 cents. There's been a tremendous deterioration in the value of our money. Similarly, there's a great deterioration that's occurred in our standards, morally, ethically, spiritually. Even in our churches. Even in our churches. Unbelievable. Now, I have not heard this personally because pastoring a church, I'm in our church every week. And if I'm not in our church, I'm in a similar church of a pastor who's a friend of mine, and we're all operating at the same level. But in a lot of the churches today, I'm being told that they use foul language from the pulpit. And their explanation is, hey, you don't wince at this or flinch at this out in the world every day, and you're there 6 days a week, so I should be upset with it here in the pulpit. Because the pulpit is God's house. The pulpit is to be holy, not unholy. Come on. Sin standards used to be they were Bible-based, so they were strict. Not anymore. Almost anything goes anymore. And, oh my goodness, I could go on and on and on, and I'm sure you understand this, but unholiness has crept into our society. It's not in small font anymore. It's in big, huge capital letters that would appear on a billboard. That's how much we have changed. Do you realize that the largest industry in the United States for exporting product is pornography? and they estimate it to be around $250 billion a year. One of the largest pornography centers in North America is in Montreal. It is a massive industry. It's porn. You should be hearing that spelled S-I-N. That's sin. But the amazing thing I've found in researching things, that something like 67% of ministers view porn at least once a week. So don't tell me that this hasn't had an impact and effect on things. We are in excruciatingly last days. Bottom line, we're on the verge. If you go back to Noah and Genesis chapter 6, God destroyed the population, which was in the multi-millions at that time. He destroyed them because they were corrupt, they were evil, they were violent, and God was sorry he had even created mankind, because the wickedness and the evil and the corruption was so bad. I think, personally speaking, I believe we have far exceeded what existed then. Far exceeded it. So how much lower down, deeper down how much more can God put up with before he says, enough is enough? We're getting very, very close. Well, I know somebody's going to have the question, I think you're overstating things. I think you're exaggerating things. I don't think things are this bad. We're in pretty good shape. Let me give you some illustrations or examples of what's going on in North America, at least, maybe not so elsewhere, but I do read a lot of world news. I'm trying to keep abreast of it, and I would suggest this is not just a North America problem. We have eliminated prayer from our schools. It's been taken out of our schools. We have eliminated the opening prayer that used to be spoken in our government settings, our municipal governments, our provincial, our state, our federal, our national governments. Prayer has been eliminated. The Ten Commandments, as an illustration, usually on a plaque or like a picture frame setting, have been pulled down almost in every setting where they existed before. And only in very rare instances do you find a state government in the United States, for instance, deciding to post them again in their municipal buildings or in their courtrooms, only to be followed by massive lawsuits brought by the anti-God crowd to take them down again. We're in the midst, I shouldn't say we, but being that we're Canadians and on the northern border of the United States and seeing what's going on there firsthand all the time, they are in the midst of their next national presidential elections. That's coming up in just a few months. We're in the middle of August. It will be the first part of November. And we've just witnessed the Republican Party having their convention, and the Democratic Party will be in the midst of their convention just about the same time as you're listening to this particular podcast. The Democratic Party voted God out of their constitutional documents on 3 different occasions in past national conventions. So they basically kicked God out. Does that not sound like unholy practice? I would suggest so. The words like sin, repentance, judgment, etc. have been removed from many denominations. I recall hearing of a consulting group, a ministry consulting group, even going back, say, 25 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. They were being hired by various ministries to to review the ministry and make recommendations on how to grow the ministry, whether it would be a local church or whether it was one of these international television type ministries, etc. And their recommendation was remove words that cause people to feel uncomfortable. So take the word sin, take the word repentance, take the word forgiveness, take the word obedience, take the word submission, take them out of your messages, out of your sermons, and you'll see growth occur in the churches or in the ministry. I know of one ministry that said no to that, and so their growth has continued, but on a very minimal scale. And then I know of another ministry that said yes to that, and their growth has been exponential. Exponential. Do you know if we refer to Romans chapter 1 in the sins there that Paul referred to, that's labeled as hate language. And our Canadian government has passed legislation that prohibits hate language, which in many cases will prohibit us referring to statements in the Bible because they could be interpreted as hate language. They're Bible verses. Give me a break. But this is called persecution and will lead to prosecution. Many Christian business owners have been sued for discrimination and have had judgments against them that have been unbelievably large because they refused to violate their own personal beliefs. And they were asked to prepare something for a same-sex wedding setting. They said, that's not our preference. Here are the names of 5 other businesses that will do that for you, and they'll do a great job. We know them. And just because they said no, they get sued, and it basically puts them out of business. Religious freedom, as we hear spoken of all the time, is being converted into freedom from religion. Not religious freedom, but freedom from religion. There's another term that we hear, and that is we have religious freedom, but it's being termed this way. You have the freedom to worship. And that means you can worship any way you want to in your homes or maybe in your church setting, but you do not have the freedom to worship this way in a public setting or over the public airwaves. So you are going to find more and more of the television programming, internet programming, social media programming is going to be affected by this change in definition. And this list that I'm referring to, those are just off the top of my head. There's many more. This is this movement of unholiness that has crept in. It may not be affecting you personally at this point in time, but you just don't know it's affecting you. You're just not aware it's affecting you. It comes out of lovers of self, lovers of money, unthankfulness, and all of a sudden you're into the midst of unholiness. Unholiness. Let's go back. We're going to move on to a new point here, but let's go back for just one moment. Unholiness, or holiness, means reverence, respect, and fear of God. Unholiness means we eliminate all of those standards. And when we eliminate all those standards, anything goes. Now, one of the things that I'm acutely aware of is having been a lawyer and having submitted myself to the legal system and to the court system and to the judges. Pretty high standards here existed when I practiced in the 80s and 90s. And as it pertained to my office time, 5 days a week, anywhere from maybe 8 to 10 hours a day, I was always dressed. Suit, tie, jacket, 3-piece suit possibly, always dressed. Never met a client except I was in a shirt, tie, and jacket. I go into professional offices today, and I'm wondering if the people are all going to the beach. They are dressed down so much that I'm wondering, why am I paying them professional fees when they don't dress like a professional? Well, it's the same thing when you go to a lot of churches today. If it's a growing church and a big church, and if it has terminology that reflects the current trends today, you're going to find most people are dressed down so badly or so much, and even the leadership, the pastor, the minister, whoever it happens to be, if they're not in a denomination that wears a robe of some description, they're going to be dressed down in most instances that you'll wonder, are they going to the beach? So this unholiness has crept in. Let's get back into our verse here. We're going to verse number 3 now. It starts off with unloving, which means without natural affection. And then it goes into unforgiving. We're going to look at number 9 on our list here for a few moments. That is unloving. And that has that's without natural affection. So it means it's the opposite of loving. The word loving in this particular case is storge in the Greek. That's S-T-O-R-G-E-S. Or S-T-O-R-G-O-S is one of the root words, and it means love, devotion, and commitment to your family. So it's a love expressed within a family setting. Parents to children, children to children, children to parents, etc. But once again, you take that word and you add an A to the front of it, and it changes it to the opposite definition. So astorgos means a lack of devotion to the family, an absence of commitment to the family, the deterioration of family relationships, the loss of family affection, and the breakdown of the family. I would suggest to you that's where we're living today. Now, this breakdown of the family is occurring across the board, it seems, and it's occurring more and more every day. So we have what we call dysfunctional families everywhere, and they don't even know it because that's the norm today. Parents do their thing, kids do their thing, et cetera, et cetera. But the Bible talks about storge. That means love towards the family, dedication to the family, natural affection for the family. Divorce is on the front lines today. It really is. And so we think of divorce as a marriage falling apart and splitting and becoming, going through legal process to be divorced. But folks, we're being divorced from friends. We're finding families are divorcing such that the kids have their life and the parents have their life and they don't even meet. We're finding that parents are divorcing without divorcing. That they're both living in the same home, but they don't have any interaction to speak of, none with the kids. And so we got all kinds of issues. Let me give you some contributing factors to this before we close out this session. I grew up quite a few years ago, and I can remember our first TV was a black and white TV, and the picture tube was almost circular, and it was in a big console, a big box, which took 2 men to lift. And for that matter, we only got 1 or 2 stations, and they were all black and white, and they were fuzzy. But now we have multiple televisions in almost every home. And so the kids have their TVs in their rooms or in the family room, in the den or whatever, and the parents have their TV, and the parents watch what they want to watch, and the kids watch what they want to watch, and there's no crossover. More than a third of all American homes have at least 3 computers in their home with access to the internet. Most American individuals spend up to 12 hours a day in front of a screen, whether it be a TV screen or an internet screen. More than 12 hours a day in front of a screen. More importantly, a cell phone, a smartphone. We have more information today. We have 5 times more information today in front of us than they had 50 years ago. Now, almost every American home has more than 3 smartphones in the home. In fact, if a child is 6 years of age, they're given a smartphone for their birthday. Almost every home has kids with smartphones. They've had to outlaw smartphones in schoolrooms. And yet if there's an Amber Alert, as we had just the other day, just blaring alert across my cell phone and then across our television screen, if an Amber Alert occurs during school hours, even though the phones have been mandated to be turned off and put away, they're going to go off all over the classroom. 60% of kids are involved in some form of extracurricular activity, such as soccer or other types of sports. And they're going this way, they're going that way. There's no unity, there's no oneness. So the family unit is breaking down. And this factor we're looking at is unloving or without natural affection. When we come back next week, I want to share with you what it was like when I was growing up with what it's like today, and it ain't the same. It's nowhere close to the same. So I trust you have a good weekend. Remember, we're very close to Jesus coming back. So if you haven't met Jesus or come to know Jesus, this would be a good time to do that. It's a very simple prayer, and get yourself involved with a really good church. Call you blessed, and I'll see you on Monday. Amen.